Welcome everyone to the L7C podcast NBA edition. That is right. We are back. The NBA is a couple of weeks upon us, the start of the regular season, and we are here to give you a little preview of this season. We got the basketball aficionado, Mr. Evan Devo, with us. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Martin. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I can't complain. NFL football's going on. And in a couple of weeks, you're going to have some NFL football and some college football sprinkled in with a little NBA basketball. So, what could be better in the month of October? And
It's
also some
double
home
dipping
cooking,
season.
potentially, hopefully, maybe you'll have some home cooking World Series play.
Wouldn't that be something up in the land as the
Mhm.
the Guardians advance past the Tigers to move on to the next round? So it'll be exciting, Martin. It feels like it's that double dipping season, right? Where every day you got something on the calendar, even those off days where you don't have college or pro football. Tuesday on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, you're still getting supplemented with again with basketball now. So
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. Shoot, the time of recording right now is during the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame enshrinement weekend up there in Springfield. So
shout out
basketball,
Vince Carter.
shout out to Vince freaking Carter. I'm going into the Hall of Fame. Well deserved. So, but Evan, we are here to talk about the present. The season starts literally in a couple of weeks. The preseason ends on the 18th, and the regular season starts on October 22nd. By the time our listeners are listening to this podcast, they will be listening to it that day of the 22nd. So, how excited are you for this season?
There's I mean, like every season, I'm super excited. Again, I think we've got just so much parity across the league. Just looking at some of the off-season transactions, and not a strong draft class. You've had enough like sprinkles of tweaks with a few key head coaching changes. We've got a decent sized rules change here. As it comes to expanded replay, which we'll get into in a little bit, and then the big surprise, Martin, is the cataclysm we have in terms of how we get our news with the retirement of Woj.
Yeah.
If we could, real quick, before we dive into our projections, this is the projection pod. For what we think the final standings are going to look like heading into the playoffs
Yep.
in 2025. Just if you could, I mean, walk through just reflections on when you heard Woj was stepping down, and then obviously the natural progression was the back of the Brinks truck to Sham Charania, his budding protege, adversary, whatever you want to call him, and out as Woj, in comes Shams. So, Martin, what were your thoughts of that retirement?
The fact that it went that way, how before Woj retired, Shams was a free agent, and it just went from him retiring to ESPN, like you said, paying Shams the money to come in. I almost felt like this was like a plan, a secret little plan in the back, like text message between adversaries, like, "Hey, I'm retiring this day." You blah blah blah, come to ESPN yada. But I don't think it went like that. But I think when I first initially heard it, I was just like, unfortunately, in the world we live in, it's like, all right, is this real? Like, is he really retiring? Or is someone trying to rib us? And then he did retire. So my initial thought was, all right, he's had enough. I mean, he has a family. He wants to be with his family. And he talked about some of the reasons, like he's got some stuff going on. And when you get to that point, man, I get it. You want to get that big thing off your plate. You've made enough money. You guys are going to live comfortably. Now you want to do something where it's less stress. You don't got to walk around with 16, 18 different phones. You only need that one phone. So I get it, man. And he's done it for a while. So I salute him in all the service. One of the best insiders I've ever seen in my lifetime. So yeah, I get it. Family and pursuing other endeavors.
Yeah, I mean, it felt early. I mean, it's one of those things where you don't think anybody like that's going to hang it up. I mean, just at the top of their game kind of thing when it comes to reporting. And I mean, really, have we ever seen anything like that? I mean, there's been different iterations of baseball reporting, the Buster Olneys. Now we're into Jeff Passan. as kind of the lead baseball breaker guy. But I mean, nobody has revolutionized, again, this war of information like Adrian Wojnarowski has. Just you think about all the back end stuff of like, him sitting on, he'll have news for 2 or 3 days and he'd sit on it until it was the right time. Or, just the backroom deals with agents, with teams, and then from his end, think about trying to just vet information as it comes into you. So, I mean, you might have a team float something out there for you to, put something with sources, say, and then just see where it lands. And does that move the market for, getting off a player or, trying to acquire a player, getting around some of the tampering stuff. Like, I mean, he was an information broker and, a broker of just substantial standing like we've never seen before. So, I mean, it's going to be an interesting transition. I mean, Shams, we're basically getting, the 1B or 1C to the same fiddle here. But I mean, really, I just think there's so many instances, across our basketball fandom, especially in the last 20 years, where he's had a heavy hand in breaking stuff. I mean, we think about the comical draft night stuff, where it was almost kind of annoying, where he would spoil the pick before it was announced by Adam Silver or David Stern. And then when they were like, all right, man, we need you to back off, it was, he's still doing it, but it was, the Atlanta Hawks are leaning towards drafting Luka Doncic before the trade, or they're strongly pointing towards, or just those little comical tweaks and stuff. But I mean, we've all had the notifications on our phone for July free agency, and think about all the seismic shifts he's ushered in the last few years. So, but yeah, like you said, I mean, that's not everything, and to run that sprint and to essentially go out there and have to drop 50-point triple doubles every day at your craft, it takes a lot out of you. So, kudos to him for deciding it was time, family and interest wise, and, heading to Bonaventure to take that on.
Yeah, I mean, for people not knowing, that is his alma mater that he's going to go work at. And this GM role is becoming more and more prevalent in college basketball with like the transfer portal and NIL and stuff like that. And it's just like one of those things. It's like, all right, you get the opportunity to still be involved in basketball. You get to go back to your alma mater, which, you're heavily grateful for all the things that it's done for you and you want to give back. It's just a perfect storm.
It really is. I mean, it seemed weird on some of the first few things that are broken that you're only hearing from Shams anymore. Again, but I mean, it's the ship has done sailed. So we're on to a new season already. Tons of excitement with it. And Martin, let's switch it over to projections, man.
Yep.
So how we've done this in the past, for those listening, probably very familiar format. We will go kind of our projections of 1 to 6, of who we have in what order. And then we will do our essentially our 7 to 10 play-in teams that we are projecting for May. So, Martin, if we start with the Eastern Conference, the home of the 2024 NBA champs, the Boston Celtics, kick things off for us. How do you see things playing out?
Do you want me to just go through 1 through 6 first, or how do you want me?
Let's do 1 through 6, and then we'll swap.
Okay. Okay. So I'll go first. I'll go my 1 through 6. So my first spot, I won't build any suspense. I do have the returning champs, the Boston Celtics, number one at the East right now. I think they're too loaded. They didn't really lose much. They still have their core with Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, Derek White, the whole nine bit. Even though Al Horford retired, shout out to my guy, but I still think they're going to be the number one seed. Number two seed, I do have the Sixers. I do have the addition with Paul George, Joel Embiid, and Maxey. I think that could propel them to the 2 seed. My number 3 seed, which may surprise some people, I do have the Cavs as the 3. Ooh. I do have them as the 3 Ooh. Seed. If you look at last year, there were only 1 or 2 games back from those top 3 seeds, and we had a lot of injuries, obviously Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, all of those things. And I think if we can get a healthy Cavs team, they can finish in that 3rd. People are probably expecting this team to be in my 3 spot with all the new additions, the Villanova, aka New York Knicks. I just I feel like if the Cavs play on top of their game, they're a little bit better than the Knicks because the Knicks still have to go through that gelling period. And during that gelling period, they might lose some games, and the Cavs can take advantage of that. My fifth seed is the Bucks. Really wasn't impressed with the Dame and Giannis combination. I know there were some injuries too, but I'm just going on what I saw last year, and they don't play defense, so I don't see them going better than those teams record wise. Then my sixth spot, the team which they could be higher by the end of this, is the Orlando Magic. I mean, I think Pablo and them, the beauty of the playoffs, putting their eyes in front of the casuals, like seeing how good Pablo and those boys are. So those are my first six.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be tightly contested again this year. I mean, I think we're talking splitting hairs with games. Who can sustain longer runs with key injuries to the roster here and there. But I mean, we could be talking a half game.
Hmm.
2.5 game separation between four spots, kind of like what we saw at the end of last year. So, I mean, I really struggled honestly with trying to put some of this together. I was surprised to see you had the Cavs that high. I mean, I'm hopeful and optimistic, but I mean, we'll see, right? So I've got the Boston Celtics, returning at the number one spot. They're the top dog to knock off. Not a lot of roster movement on their side of things, as they bring just about everybody back. I do have at number two. This will probably be a surprise. I do have a healthier Milwaukee team at number
Okay.
two.
Sure.
So obviously a lot of injuries last year. Not having Giannis, trying to work out the gel stuff, firing the coach midway through the year. But let me tell you the couple things I like. So obviously no Pat Bev, no Malik Beasley for that 3-point shooting piece. They add in a couple good defensive bodies in there in DeLon Wright and Torian Prince. But the key acquisition I really like is an upgrade. I mean, you want to talk about getting a guy on a vet minimum who's just going to perform. I mean, Gary Trent. I've long loved Gary Trent Jr. Would have loved to see us find a way to get him, as an undersized three on the Cavs, but I really think that's going to be a huge piece there. So it's going to be fascinating to see, in all honesty. So I've got them at two. Three, I do have the Philadelphia 76ers.
Mhm.
Martin, let's walk through a little bit of their offseason, right? So you bring in Paul George as the Clippers literally say, hey, sorry, we don't want to do this, second apron stuff, and they just let him walk. I mean, it's still wild. I mean, for all the assets they gave up, they still have assets that they owe Oklahoma City as a part of this deal. It's just fascinating to me that, again, you never let the asset walk. You find some way to rehome him. I mean, bring him back, overpay for a little bit, and then try to move him on if it's truly money. But just to let him walk for nothing is just astounding to me. And Philadelphia had the space, and they created it and went from there. But Martin, it's about the other pieces around the roster I think that are particularly interesting. So we know about Tyrese Maxey, we know about Joel Embiid. They re-signed Kyle Lowry. They re-signed Kelly Oubre, who really outperformed his flyer last year. But listen to some of these other ones on the fringes. You have Gershon Yabusele, who obviously had a phenomenal Olympics run. There were some rumors the Cavs might have been trying to kick the tires on him too, but he signs with Philly. They steal Caleb Martin from the Miami Heat, gritty guard who can hit some timely buckets here and there. Reggie Jackson's on the backside of point guard duties, but I mean, he's certainly not, wash by any means. I mean, you're looking for a backup point guard, third string. Heck yeah, I'll take that. And then you have Andre Drummond for some sizable front court depth, and then Eric Gordon as well. So, I mean, I'm really impressed with what we've seen there with what they've been able to add. So at number four, I do have the New York Knickerbockers. Again, huge off season. They bring in Bridges. Obviously, the most recent news of the Karl Anthony Towns piece, shipping out Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle to Minnesota. It'll be interesting to see as they gel, but just as you said, I mean, I think it takes time for some of these newer teams to gel. And I think the Sixers are more primed to take that with some of their additions, knowing that, hey, I mean, it's still the Embiid Maxey piece than it is with some of the wholesale changes that the Knicks have had. And, the Knicks, lack of front court depth behind Cat, and Cat's not really a post center rebounder guy either. That might eat away a little bit. At 5 and 6, I've got the same 5 and 6 from from last year. I have Cleveland at number 5, and I've got Orlando at number 6. So Cavs double down, triple down, bring everybody back. They didn't really add a whole lot. They grabbed JT Thor on a two-way, a big 6'10" trial wing, but I mean, you're not expecting a lot from your two-way guys. And then for Orlando, their huge pickup was they needed some shooting. They bring in KCP from Denver, which absolutely provides that. So that's my 1 through 6.
Okay. All right. Now let's hit the 7 to 10, the play-in. There's really not that many teams in the East you can really pick from here, but we'll see. I think we'll have the same teams, but different orders potentially. Seven, I got the in-season tournament darlings from the Pacers, and then 8, I got the don't know what you'll get from them every postseason Miami Heat. 9, I got the love the 9-10 seed area Atlanta Hawks, and the same nickname for the 10th spot with they just find the way to get this last spot every time, Chicago Bulls. What say you?
The exact same 4 teams, slightly different order.
Okay.
So I have the Pacers number 7. Mm-hmm. I have the Hawks at number 8. Okay. Obviously they ship out DeJounte Murray. They bring in, some assets and some sorts. So, I mean, I think Larry Nance will thrive in that kind of pick and pop offense. Dyson Daniels as well too. So, I mean, we'll see where they go there. I have them at number 8. I've got actually the Chicago Bulls. For some reason, this is probably one of my putting my necks out there. They add Josh Giddey. But I've liked enough of what I've seen from, some of the other parts, not named Zach LaVine, just to kind of see how things, wrap around the rest of the team. So they get Jalen Smith from the Pacers, Chris Duarte from the Kings. They re-signed Patrick Williams. So, I mean, I've got them at 9, and that might be, again, a little bit of a stretch. And then I've got the Miami Heat at 10 that, they've lost. I mean, last 2 off seasons, they've lost Gabe Vincent and they've lost, Caleb as well too. And, again, you're rolling it back out with an older Jimmy Butler. I mean, you're going to be frisky. I mean, it's always a team you'd be afraid of, but I don't see a lot of progression there. And it might be, again, we might be splitting hairs towards the end of the 9-10 folks with, hey, are they separated by a game or 2 or whatever? So those are my 1 through 10.
Got you. Well, I kicked it off for the East, Evan, so you go ahead. We got to go to the Western Conference. You kick it off there, and what are your first 6 teams in the West?
My first 6 teams in this order, I've got number 1, I've got the Oklahoma City Thunder, 2 huge acquisitions for a team that was already, a phenomenal overperformer last year, and adding Alex Caruso and then adding Isaiah Hartenstein. So they get some much needed front court depth. They get that, phenomenal first team caliber, all defense guy to complement, SGA and Jalen Williams, J-Dub. I've got them at number 1. Number 2, I've got Minnesota. So you've got, next progression of Anthony Edwards, kind of subpar Olympics, as everybody was billing him out to be, just this coming out party. So, I mean, there were times he really struggled. They had to rely on the vets, but another year under his belt. And, I do like those acquisitions for them. You swap out Cat and you've got, some additional shooters, some additional ball handlers, and DiVincenzo and Julius Randle. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they progress as well, too. I've got them at number 2. 3, I've got Denver. Not going to spend a lot of time on them. Losing KCP certainly doesn't help. Adding Westbrook certainly doesn't help, but they're going to try it. They also had Dario Saric for some backup big pieces. At number 4, I've got the NBA Finals representative from the Western Conference, Dallas Mavericks, who've added Klay Thompson, who certainly doesn't have to be a number 2 horse anymore, having Kyrie and Luka ahead. So we'll see how his next foray towards the end of his career comes in Dallas, just, spot up shooting. They also add Spencer Dinwiddie, Quentin Grimes from the Knicks, and then Najee Marshall to a 3-year deal as well. And at 5 and 6, I've got the new home of DeJounte Murray at number 5, the New Orleans Pelicans with a slimmed down Zion Williamson. They knew they had to shake it up a little bit. They still are desperately looking for a center. It sounded like most of the summer they tried to get creative and shop Brandon Ingram. It's been long floated this, what if we did Jared Allen for Brandon Ingram piece? And you never say stuff's off the table, but I mean, a $50 million a year price tag for Brandon Ingram is just a hefty thing to pay, regardless of where the cap goes. But in this double apron piece, I mean, that's why I think they've struggled to find him. And I mean, he's a better end bubble all-star by all means, but I mean, to command that kind of price, I mean, you got to have just above and beyond efforts in your performance. And then number 6, I've got the boys of Sacktown under Mike Brown and Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox, the whole crew at 6. So Martin, what say you on the West?
All right, the Western Conference. Number 1, I do have the same number 1. I have the Thunder for all the reasons you said already in SGA second in MVP voting. Number 2, I have them a little higher though. I do have the Western Conference champions, the Mavericks. I think
wow,
that playoff run, I think, was a lot of great momentum because again, a lot of people did not expect the Mavs to be in the finals, and I just feel like the addition of Clay, depending on what Clay's going to be highly motivated to show that he's not washed up. You still have to pay him respect. So with Luka and a healthy Kyrie throughout the season, driving to the paint, kicking out to them, if PJ Washington stays the way he was, or even remotely what he was in the playoffs, I just like the way they played at the end of the year. Not when they lost to Boston, they were outmatched, but just making that finals run and Luka being one of the top 2, 3 best players in the league. I think this is the time for the jump, especially if you want to win some regular season awards, you need to be this kind of high. I do got the Timberwolves at 3. And then for all the same things you said, I have the Nuggets at 4. I have this team begrudgingly, but currently all 3 of them are healthy. I do have the Phoenix Suns at 5. I have them at 5. But we'll see what they could do a full regular season. And then 6th spot, will drink the Kool-Aid and make the finally play out of the play-in. I have the Los Angeles Lakers.
Okay.
Oh yeah, they're a little crazy in the West.
Yeah. I mean, I've got similar teams as we transition to our play-in bucket, we'll call it. But number 7, probably the best assets on a team, left on the board for me. I do have Phoenix at number 7. It just, for whatever reason, I mean, just hasn't clicked. The Beal thing, you kind of really leveraged the farm for that 3rd superstar. And I mean, he has entirely struggled, but let me tell you the upside for Phoenix. So Phoenix does lose Eric Gordon in free agency to Philly, but they lost David Roddy and Drew Eubanks, not players that are entirely going to be missed. What they do get back is a healthy Grayson Allen, who honestly was phenomenal for Phoenix. They get some front court depth with Mason Plumlee, so that's an upgrade going from Eubanks to Plumlee. And then they get Monty Morris. They steal Tyus Jones as a kind of facilitator so you really are talking yourself into, now with Coach Bud, the championship proven coach, to try to get some of those 3 to be able to play off the ball more because you've got a table setter like Tyus Jones now. And then, again, he started his career with an ACL loss, but EJ Liddell, former Buckeye as well, too. So maybe he might crack, some rotation minutes towards the end of the bench for some front court depth as well, too. So I've got them 7. Number 8, I have the Warriors of Golden State. Outside of Buddy, not really a lot going on with that roster. I mean, obviously you got an aging Steph. You've lost Clay now. So I've got them, sliding maybe a couple spots from where I had them last year. 9 and 10, I have the Los Angeles Clippers. I still think there's enough talent there to to be fighting your way, and maybe they could be at 9, or maybe they could be at 10, but I've got them at 9. Kevin Porter Jr., hellacious allegations, salacious stuff playing out in court. Overall, not a great human being. We could attest back to his Cleveland days, but dude can ball, and until he gets ripped off the court for inevitably something else that might happen again, that's not so great. He's a contributor. So I've got them at 9, and then again at 10, their very last, I had the Los Angeles Lakers. So it will be interesting to see. Martin, the Bronny minutes have been so bad, man. I mean, again, you've got JJ Redick, first time head coach. He's trying to manage all the personalities, manage, one of the most all time players in NBA history, and LeBron, what his wishes are. But I mean, the obvious is, I don't know when the obvious comes to fruition, but can't keep giving this dude minutes, and we're only in preseason, but I mean, it's just not fair to the kid if you truly want to develop him, but it's bad. Their only addition was Christian Coloco on a 2-way deal to the same roster that they bring back that, just continues to not progress in the playoffs. So those are my 7 through 10. How do they line up for you?
All right. 7 through 10 for me. So 7, I have the Pelicans. I feel weird with the Pelicans because, again, I hate the cliche fully healthy, but this team, the Lakers would not have made it to the Nuggets last year if Zion didn't get hurt in that play-in game. He had 40 points
Yep.
before exiting. Like, that team is really good. Like, Zion, when he's engaged, Brandon Ingram's a freaking bucket. They got McCollum. Like, they got a good team. It's just every time something happens. Number 8, because if this is going to be the new era and he's going to be on a full redemption tour, I got the Memphis Grizzlies. Ja Morant coming back. Obviously, when he was healthy the full time, took the lead by storm. Memphis was one of the top teams, and then they inevitably got destroyed by the Lakers in that playoff game. But I think he's going to get them into a play-in game. I also think my 9 spot's the Kings. I think their talent. I mean, De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis. I think they can get into a play-in game too. My last spot, I really struggled. Kawhi, Kawhi's been questionable for game 1 since summertime, and we haven't even played a game. So I don't know what to expect from the Clippers. I don't know what to expect from the Warriors. They might take a backslide. So I'm going to take a team that got hot at the end, and I'm going to take the Rockets at 10. So I'm going to have the Clippers and the Warriors both out, not making the playoffs this year.
Oh, wow.
I don't
I
see
like
it.
some
I
of
don't
those.
see it
I
with
like some of
the.
those swings.
I don't see it with the. If Kawhi doesn't play the first 2-3 months of the season, they're not getting in.
Martin, there's a couple teams like that. If we were to, so we've just laid out our 1 through 10, East and West. Give me, and maybe those are the 2 of your 3, obviously, but give me maybe 2 or 3 teams that will absolutely upend one of the spots you've placed for them if one of their key guys goes down. Because there's teams that can sustain because they've got depth. But I agree with those 2 that you just mentioned. Is there anybody else that stands out like that?
In the West, no, I mean, no, I don't.
East or West?
Oh, East or West. Ooh. Well, so if one of my players go down on the people I've picked, who could take one of their spots? Is that what we're saying? Okay. Well, it'll be the Clippers and Warriors, and I don't think they're good. I was gonna say I don't think they're good enough yet. Give it 2 or something more years. I think the Spurs will be back in 2 years. 2 years, not this year. I think Wembley. Now that everyone knows how good he is, like I feel like this season is going to be a highlight reel. But I don't think they're going to win a lot of games. Even with the Chris Paul leadership, I think in 2 years it'll be something, but not right now. In terms of the East, absolutely not. I think the East is literally those 10 teams and no one else, unless you're expecting something from Detroit to be better, but I just don't see anyone else in the East.
Yeah, I don't either. But I mean, I think there could be surprises on either side. So I mean, like if I'm looking at the East and like I mean, if they don't have Bam or they don't have like Jimmy with Miami, like is
Hmm.
that a team that could fall out? And you've got like a weird thing where like suddenly Charlotte has entered the chat,
Yeah.
or yeah, something like that. So I mean that's the key team to stand out to me. East, you mentioned the same thing in the West. I mean, I think Golden State for sure is one of those teams. I think right, wrong, and different. I mean, I think the Lakers could be one of those teams too. I
Hmm.
mean, you had one of the most healthy seasons that you've ever seen from the combination of Davis and LeBron last year, and that was not to get you too far, and they need every bit of that. So I mean, again, like I just don't see if you lose Davis or LeBron, I don't see a combo of like, okay, well now it's the Austin Reeves taking 20 shots a night kind of thing to help you out. I mean, he's a great player, but I just don't see that sustainable. Nor do they have the depth. Again, under a first year coach, I think that's a team that could slip out pretty quickly. So, and then that would be in favor for me. I think Memphis would be my first one in. People are super high on. I want to be a Zach Edey believer, but
Hmm.
I mean, I just don't think he's going to be, this big game changing piece coming in. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but I mean, I just don't see the foot speed. I just see a lot of how many guys have we seen like this, particularly. I'll use the University of Kansas as an example. Where we've got these big 7-footers, who can just dominate purely based on size at the
Hmm.
collegiate level, and they bring them up, here, and they don't have the foot speed. They can't stay in front of people. They're targeted in actions, second actions, and they're run off the court. So, I mean, Memphis has lost some pieces. Having Marcus Smart will be back definitely helps. Having Luke Kennard back that they just re-signed, helps. But again, it can't all be on Jaws, laurels as well too. So I mean, I think that's the first one. Should one of those teams falter, and I would put the Spurs at number two as well. If Golden State were to have we've suddenly lost Steph. Like, I mean, that's a team that could go south real quick. You know what I mean? So
Hmm. Hmm. And I think with the fun about these preseason predictions and all of that is we don't know what's going to happen. Like we don't have a crystal ball that's going to happen when we start October. We don't know which players are going to make tremendous leaps. We don't know which players are going to regress. Like that's the beauty of making these predictions now. That when we see the regular season unfold, and we're like, "Oh, this person's a lot better than I thought he was this year," or vice versa, and then we'll both have a combination of both of our lists, just in different orders.
let's move on to MVP.
Hmm.
We know the usual rhythm of this podcast, and you and I both are always on the same page that there's always, probably 4 or 5 names that continuously, are up there, for a 5 or 6 year run, and then maybe we
Yep.
cycle in a new name to the pocket for the next iteration as players, age and stuff, or develop routine injuries. So there's probably a pocket of players that we can both name, and we also know that goes up against voter atrophy,
Yep.
where, hey, we've seen a pattern of people say, hey, like, I really don't want to give it to Jokic for the fourth time in, 4 or 5 years or something like that. So those are kind of the two running timelines that usually combat this award. And then obviously the season has to play itself out. People have to hit that 65 game minimum, whether or not they're eligible. But I mean, all things of that nature aside, Martin, who do you have at the top?
Now, I do have I have this split. So I have the person who I think is going to win MVP, like, and then I have the person who, if you're looking to get good value money wise for MVP. So who I
Okay.
think's gonna win last year, I was very heavily on SGA. I even put my own money into it. He came in second place. We know the
Oh,
story, so it was close, very close. Um, I do think this year it's time for a crowning since he's made it to a finals, and now people have seen him make it to a finals. They're going to give him the regular season ascension crown. I think it's going to be Luka Doncic's time. It's time. They're going to give him that regular season crown. It's like, all right, we saw you make it to a finals. However backwards that logic is. It's just sometimes how these NBA reporters are. They're going to have a good team. I think he'll win. Now, story wise and value wise, if you're going to put your money, if you want to try and make a decent amount, at plus around 1,800 to 2,000. Mr. Jason Tatum. Obviously, you listen to our Olympic stuff, the
It's
whole
that
drop.
low?
Yeah, it's well
Oh my
low.
goodness.
So yes, well, you'll listen to the Olympic stuff. You know about the Olympic drama and what do these voters love more than drama. Obviously, Jaylen Brown won the Eastern Conference and Finals MVP. So then they could be like, oh, Tatum's coming in to get his MVP. Plays really well, blah, blah, coming off that Olympic drama. And then he team's the best record in the East. Once again, he's leading the charge, probably averaging 27 and 10. So that'd be one for money wise. Because if you could get Jason Tatum right now, plus 1,400 to plus 2,000, depending on where you bet, I think that's pretty good odds.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, and I'm going to agree with you. I had thought that was going to be the case last year, and was wrong. But
Hmm.
I've got Luca finally being crowned this year.
Hmm.
It's just amazing to watch him play basketball. Again, none of it's athletic. It's so skillful though, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. You're telling me that, okay, now he's got Clay to dish off to. Obviously the big trades with PJ Washington last year, it really helped as well, and that was key to their run. Never seen a February trade deadline swing like that to propel a team with the tools necessary. That was kind of a anywhere from a 4 to 6 kind of range team in terms of on paper in a conference, jump them into the finals. So
Hmm.
that would be my one. My low value buy for MVP is and probably not as low as Tatum, but it's got to be somewhere around there. Would be Jalen Brunson. Depending on how the Knicks
He's
shake out,
right
yeah,
above him, one spot above him.
yeah. So I'm not looking at a sheet, so I'm just going off of where I anticipate Vegas might
Mhm.
have been. But so I mean, again, depending on where all those new tools come, you've got essentially the main orchestrator of the New York Knicks Ferrari now. With some new tools in his tool belt, and should players buy into Tibbs and Tibbs not run people into the ground with 48 minutes the first month of the year. Just I think you could see something where the Knicks might shoot up a little bit higher in the standings than we have them projected, and he's the main cog in the engine with all of his herky jerky paint stuff and sometimes quasi flopping, I'll call it, for things. But I mean, he's a guy who continuously gets to the foul line, continues to put up buckets. I mean, he's a walking 20-point minimum every night, and just I mean, he's an assassin for his size, man. So that's my buy low guy.
I love it.
Martin, the other one, there's tons of other awards. Let's do defensive player of the year.
Victor Wembanyama.
I got him too.
Oh, I will.
Obviously,
Rudy Gobert will never win that award ever again. Ever again.
I'd say that's the same. Obviously, I would like to see good things with Evan Mobley. But
Hmm.
I'm interested to see, particularly with Cleveland, and I didn't spend a lot of time on the Cavs, but people hear enough from me on the Cavs on these podcasts. But from the Cavs side of things, you bring in a new coach who really wants to have the ball in his hands as an orchestrator and as an offensive player. So yeah, I've got Victor as well for my defensive player of the year, and obviously, it's been a 2024 of buying some stocks in terms of rookie basketball cards for Victor. So I'm hopeful those go up with another strong year in the sophomore season. So
I love it. What other awards do you want to try and do coach or any of those?
let's let those sit. I think for
Yeah.
this time, some of those will become a little bit more clear as we head into the season.
Mhm.
Let's those are the two big ones. But I do want to talk about the rule change.
Yeah.
So in the show notes, we sent that over on the expanded replay. What was your first thought when you heard the announcement? Reading through the bylaws again today, what are your thoughts?
I hate anything that involves expanding of replay just because
Yes.
these games, like you have that finite window of, all right, you're investing 2 hours into a game if you're a fan. If you have so many replays because every now we have challenge flags in the NBA and all of that, you don't want these games going over 3.5 hours just because we have added replay time. So that's where I'm just like, do we really need this? And like
Yeah.
that's my biggest thing. Like, is this gonna help? Sure, it might help with some calls, but is it gonna hurt the product in general? Because now we're gonna be sitting here like our games are going way too slow.
That's my same assessment. I mean, we've just got so much in overtime, or so much in overtime, so much in instant replay that, I
Hmm.
mean, it is frustrating when you continue to add, and then like, how many times we're watching it and like, how did you not see indisputable evidence of X, Y, or Z? And they still get it wrong. So, again, there'll be a couple games this year. I'm sure will be saved for a team here and there for, hey, a player did touch it before. And that's for the listeners. The main rule change is, okay, now there's basically consideration for, home team player knocks the ball out of bounds last, in the waning seconds, loses the possession. But now you can account for and go to review for, okay, was he pushed, and at which point he dropped the ball as a result of that push or bump, that might not have been called. So they can review it and go back and like retroactively add a foul for a team to, not only keep possession, but, if they're in the bonus, if it's the second and the last 2 minutes, that you can essentially, head to the foul line. So again, like as long as it's used judiciously, but we just got such a track record with NBA reviews that it's not used judiciously, and it's a long thought process to get there.
No, I yeah. We'll see, especially that first opening week on the 22nd. We'll see how it's implemented, and that's going to be a telling point. But we got to see it in action before we can really do anything. I know there was one other thing on the show notes, Evan. I do want to just quickly say, because I haven't been on an NBA podcast to say this, to rest in peace to NBA legend Dikembe Mutombo. Just wanted to make sure I threw that out there.
Yep. Dikembe was, he had made, a couple of different rounds in his career in different stops. I mean, obviously the infamous, finger wag, but what he did to advance the game of basketball, globally. There were stories of him, going at the end of the season. I was listening to a pod with Raja Bell, who only played with him, I think, for a year in Philly, talking about, hey, at the end of the season, him and his big booming deep voice would go locker to locker as people are basically like, hey, all this extra swag and stuff, just go ahead and pitch it or box it up and, send it, whatever else. I mean, Dikembe would go locker to locker to, secure, player worn items and, memorabilia and shirts and all that kind of stuff to, take back home, to just inspire the next generation, or to give them the means, or give them something to hold on to that would help advance, the sport back in Africa. And then obviously we've had the development of the NBA Africa games. I mean, just a sizable human being, another instance of just, the ruthless thing that is cancer, taking them way too soon. I cannot agree with you more. Just, an excellent torch carrier for the game of basketball in his own right, in addition to his on court production. So
then going to the last thing that talk about real quickly. Netflix has got on this thing where they're bringing more current sports documentary type shows to their platform. Obviously, they had Receiver, where they followed people who received the ball, even George Kittle, even though he's a tight end. That's besides the point. They had race where they followed track athletes into the world championship and the Olympics. Now you have the basketball version that is currently on Netflix, following the players, starting five, the players that Netflix has chosen or who agreed to do it. The NBA, I don't know who the choosing process is, but that has gone on Netflix as well. Evan, so far, people have liked it. What are your thoughts on starting five? And bonus question, if
Yeah.
you were in charge and got to pick the five people that they followed,
Ooh.
who would you have picked?
That's a great question. So I'm about 2 episodes in. That first episode, there's just a lot to unpack, man.
Hmm.
So spoilers if you're listening and plan to go watch here, or maybe this is your motivation to go watch some of it. So you're five. You've got Bonus, you've got Jimmy Butler, you've got LeBron, you've got Ant Man, and you've got Jason Tatum. So they kind of do these like little vignettes of who they are as a person, their lift with the team, that they're trying to do. And it's retroactive to the 23-24 season, with some side cameos and interviews that they agreed to sit down with. So, everybody's got an interesting flavor, to them. I mean, I learned a few things around, Jimmy has long thought of himself of, just kind of being not necessarily an outcast, but just kind of marching the beat of his own drum. So it was cool to
Hmm.
kind of see like what inspired the emo hair media day piece, and it was all recommendation from his nanny with his kids. Like she said, "Hey, you should just show up and go straighten your hair and kind of go emo." And then obviously I didn't know he was a huge domino player, as much as he is and fast as himself to be. So, it was interesting to see. And then obviously anytime you get LeBron behind the scenes, that was really cool as well too. And then, the, what did you think of the ant segment and what you've seen so far?
About him, the which specifically when he was talking about Tatum best in the league, F out of here, or
So, we knew we had that in him. Like, he's not afraid of the challenge. He's not afraid of the smoke. Like, I did not truly know the full backstory about obviously losing his mom and sister raising him, all that kind of stuff. That he's had this chip and the strong bond with his sister as well too. But there are some other aspects of it that I was like, man, like we know what we've got in him. He's a dog. He's primed to be kind of the future of the league. But there are other
Mhm.
things of like, okay, your uncle, and he even admitted it's weird, but like your uncle packs all your stuff for you and like for all these road trips and like they're just, some like, are you still 16 kind of stuff like at home,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like that was, I don't know, that was in the best light, like, but clearly he was okay with it to sign off on doing that. But there were some pieces there, and I'm like, I don't know if that spills over into any leadership stuff on the court. Obviously, we're not privy to that, but that really stood out to me, man.
He actually just talked about leadership stuff 2 days ago about how
Yeah.
like some players can take the tough criticism, the yelling and all that, but you can't do that to everyone. You can't do the Michael Kobe approach and just yell and kill everyone. You got to sometimes know the players who can take it and the players who don't. You got to go a different way. And I'm like, oh, fair enough.
But and then Sabonis, it was really cool seeing the background with his dad Arvidas, and what eventually kind of inspired him to come into basketball. It just seems like a real kind of salt of the earth, gentle giant guy, but obviously incredibly tenacious on the floor. So, and then obviously you get the Tatum flares and what he battled, in the first couple episodes of the season with all the, hey, can he and Brown get it done for the Celtics? Ultimately they would. But Martin, my five I'd pick, I think I'd still go with LeBron. Obviously I've got some Cavs ties. I think Donovan Mitchell is a fascinating mind and human being. So you talk about, some of his off court efforts, his passion for, obviously it has been, floated out there that he hated Cleveland, even though he resigned this year and he wanted to get to
Hmm.
New York. And obviously the ties are to, his father in the New York Mets. And, I think that'd be a cool, thing to profile along with just his work ethic as well too. So I'd probably have those two. I do like Jimmy is a third. I don't think that's necessarily a bad one, but I'd love to find more of the. I might swap Jimmy out for Joker. We all know Joker would never sign up for that. He's so good at basketball, but he just kind of wants to barely do enough and get back to Serbia, ride his horses and stuff. But maybe there's a story there on what he does outside of basketball and his mindset and annoyances, frustrations, passion here and there for basketball. So that might be a third. I think it would be fascinating too to follow maybe kind of more of like a journeyman player, like like a Chris Middleton or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not just picking out Chris, but an archetype like that knows their role, is a strong third fiddle on a highly successful team, and then just trying to figure out those dynamics. And then
Like,
maybe
what about Drew? Drew would have fit that, especially getting traded this year. Like
Drew Holiday, yeah,
yeah.
Drew would have absolutely fit that. I think that's the same mold, that same archetype would be somebody I'd chase on that one. And then number 5, oh man, trying to think who might be left to follow that would be of high interest. I mean, obviously, I don't think you could go Wemby this young. I mean, maybe that's coming up in another season, but that would be an interesting fall as well too. But maybe like a Tyrese Maxey in that in that Ant-Man role kind of thing, is budding superstar. Has the scoring ability, the touch, the passion, just to find out a little bit more about him. But I mean, again, that's the beauty of the NBA, and that's why we like it. There's so many individual narratives, that have their fingerprints all over this team-based game, and what they're bringing, baggage, good or bad, around the scenes into each season, and the progression of their team is why we all love it. I mean, there's so many different ways you can go.
I like it. I like it. That would be Evans. Netflix 5. Maybe they should call you for season.
Highly recommend.
They might call you for season 2 and ask you
They
for
might.
your and ask for your recommendations there. Evan, man, anything else on this preview as the season starts October 22nd?
I got nothing else. Again, highly encourage you guys to listen, or take a listen to Starting 5 on Netflix. I think you'll find it's really good if you're already consuming this type of content, because you're listening to this podcast, right? So that's our takeaway and send home. Enjoy the double dip of the season with for those of you that like basketball and football, of almost, again, 7 nights a week of some awesome games and stuff. And it's going to be a great start to yet the next chapter of hoops on the hardwood. So.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say, just want to throw you these quick ones out, because the 2024-25 GM surveys did come
Oh
out.
yeah.
40% said SGA was going to win MVP. Number 2 was Luka, tied for 3rd, Joker and B, Jason Tatum. If you were starting a franchise today and you could sign any player, who would you sign? 77% Victor.
Yeah. No brainer.
Which player forces opposing coaches to make the most adjustments? Luka Doncic, 33%, Curry, 30%, Joker, 23%. Who's mostly going to have a breakout season in 2024-25 season? Jalen Williams, the Oklahoma City Thunder, 13%. Tied for second place, Evan Mobley and John Morant and Victor, all 10%.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then best
I
point.
really think Kenny Atkinson is going to find a way to unlock Evan Mobley offensively. And again, what it sounds like, it's more of the Draymond bring the ball down the court, facilitator, run stuff out of the hub. But he's only played 1 preseason game so far. But I mean, he had like 16 at the half. And I mean, again, it's this preseason. You got to throw this stuff out the window. But I liked he was aggressive. It was like almost what we saw in that Boston series. So I hope that we continue to try to build him up in that capacity. And hopefully he is that breakout guy.
Yeah, just a couple of those. I'll post the whole thing in the description box. This is very interesting to see. But I agree, man. Time you're listening to this, NBA season started. Enjoy it. It'll be very interesting. I'm telling you, we might have another close MVP race. There's going to be a lot of people emerging that we didn't speak of, but just be on the lookout for that, and we'll be following it throughout the whole season. With that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. Make sure you like, rate, comment, subscribe wherever you listen. NBA, October 22nd. It's back. Enjoy it. L7C, take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.